am currently in Bangkok, Thailand, as you can see from the gorgeous view behind me. And we just had a really interesting experience, and I wanted to create a video on this. So we basically just spent almost $700 on a Michelin star meal, and we left the place still hungry. And so this brings the question of expectation versus reality. Is expensive food actually worth it? I want to dive in because there are so many interesting sales psychology kind of like tidbits that you can understand from this experience. Now, first of all, if you don't know who I am, my name is Anna Rogers. I've been traveling the world for the last 11 years with my husband, and we do business. We own a couple of businesses, and we've been fortunate enough to have incredible experiences around the world. And what fascinates me when we travel, when we go on these like experiences, is the human element and the sales psychology of spending on experiences. Now, what do I mean by this? Now, a couple of years back, I remember this so clearly. We landed in Lima in Peru, and we were so excited to eat in this restaurant. It was booked out for months, and I had managed to secure a reservation at like an odd time. It was like 10:30, 11 in the morning, and it was like the last spot, and I managed to secure this reservation like months in advance. And when we got there, the food was incredible. It was actually one of the best omakase tastings that we have ever experienced. It was a mix between Japanese and Peruvian, so it was a fusion. And that restaurant is actually the number one restaurant in the world at the moment. And so we had that experience, and it was amazing, incredible. We still talk about it. And then the very next day, we had dined in a hole in the wall restaurant in the middle of Lima. This place was very, very humble. It had maybe about 12 seats, and all of the seats were like plastic chairs, and you were kind of just gathered around this like counter. And I would say the food was good. It was good. We left so satisfied. And so ever since that experience, we are always in search of the contrast. We're always in the search of, when you dine in these expensive restaurants, do people say it's really, really good because they want to justify how much they just spent? And admitting that it wasn't as good is like, you're a little bit butthurt because you just spent all that money. And so I was thinking about this, and we just had the exact same experience today. So we are currently in Bangkok, Thailand, and my husband and my nephew are doing the High Rocks competition. And we're currently here, and we figured Bangkok is like the foodie capital of Asia. There's so much amazing food here. And we've been watching this show on, I think it's on Netflix. It's called Chasing Stars. So my husband and I were massive foodies. And so we spend a lot of our money on food. Food and experiences. Our company, Lifestyle Rich, is all about that. It's like create money and moments. And so we found a Michelin star restaurant here. Now, we were so excited for this meal because I think it is the first 3-star Michelin restaurant that we have ever dined in. And we had booked this place. We were so excited. If you go through the Google reviews, it has like glowing reviews. Everyone is like, oh my gosh, it was amazing. It's the best restaurant in Bangkok, blah, 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 blah. And so we got there, and we walked in, and there was like a team of people standing by the door, and everyone, I love Thai people. They're so nice and friendly, and everyone's like, Sawadee and like welcoming you in. So service, hospitality, how nice everyone was, 10 out of 10. The food though, the food was surprising. I would even go to say as slightly underwhelming. It started off really well, but the pacing was off. We sat on like a lunch sitting. We were waiting on some of the dishes. Some of the dishes felt like a letdown. And so we left the experience. We were just like, ah, okay. And Tom and I are the type of people that just because we spent money on it, we're not going to rave about it. We're not going to be like, well, yeah, it was good, but this and this. No. If it was bad, then we would say it was bad. And we left and we're like, oh, that was okay. It was a little bit disappointing. And which was really funny because last night when we had first arrived here in Bangkok, we were so hungry and we literally just got to our hotel room, dropped our bags, and went out to the streets. And we found this restaurant. We asked the receptionist in our hotel, we're like, where's the best local Thai food that you like to eat in? And she kind of thought for a while and she's like, oh. And she gave us the name of this place and we went there and had the most amazing meal and we ordered so much food and I think it was like $25. And so we were eating during lunch today and Tom and I were like, did you prefer the meal last night? And both of us were laughing because both of us were like, yeah, I massively enjoyed the meal last night compared to this. And so this kind of brings into perspective expectation versus reality and how oftentimes that contributes to the experience of how you are perceiving things, because everything is a perception, right? And so we came into this experience with a very high expectation. This is a 3-star Michelin restaurant. It is well rated for a restaurant to get 3 stars. It's insane. They go through a very rigorous process. There's only 137 restaurants in the world that have 3 Michelin stars. And so we were really, really excited. And because of it, I think when it did not meet our standards or we weren't blown away, we were then very disappointed. Versus if you go into a place, and like literally the place that we went to last night, it was very local and we didn't go there with any expectations. We were just really hungry and the food just blew us away. We were like, oh my gosh, that was so good. And so if you are someone who does business, if you are an entrepreneur, I want you to think of the concept of expectation versus reality. And not even if you're just an entrepreneur, like this goes for everything. If you are planning a trip, if the expectation is really, really high and people enter this trip with like very high expectations, then all of a sudden the experience changes. I think one of the most interesting experiences that we had of this was Tom and I recently signed up for paddle camp. And when we were in paddle camp, the teachers, they're all from Spain. One of the very first thing that he said to us, the head coach, the first thing that he said to us, he was just like, the things that you will be learning in the paddle camp today is not going to make you a better player straight away. And we're just like, what? What's he talking about? I'm here for paddle camp because I want to improve. And he was just like, no. He was just like, what you are going to learn will help you become a better player in 3 months' time, in 6 months' time, because we are teaching you the fundamentals. We are teaching you how to think, how to return balls. And so afterwards, Tom and I were talking about it. We're like, oh, this is really interesting because as entrepreneurs, I feel like we can learn something from this. If you take the time to set the expectation when people come into your world, when people join your program, when people listen to whatever it is that you are saying and you set it, then you are able to rise above their expectation and you are able to give them a pleasurable experience. And so we were just thinking about it. And so that was one of the things that kind of stood out to us. It's just like the expectation versus reality. But another thing that stood out was money and how your perception of money is so interesting in your money beliefs. Now, Tom and I did not come from money. Both of us worked very, very hard for everything that we have. In fact, last night I had kind of like this crazy moment because, we had gotten on the airplane, we had business class flights, and then when we got and arrived in Bangkok, we booked a taxi It was like, we got in the taxi, and then the first thing the taxi says is it okay if I pass the tollway because it's really traffic? And Tom and I are like, yes, the fastest way to get there. And I just had this like deja vu of when I was still living in the Philippines and I was working my 9 to 5 job. I would sit in traffic for an additional hour and 30 minutes because I couldn't afford to take the tollway route, because my salary wouldn't stretch so that I could actually pay for the toll fees and save an hour to an hour and a half. And then I just had this moment where I look at Tom and I was just like, whoa. I was like, this is crazy. And I shared that, and Tom's like, wow. Now, perception of money changes depending on your childhood experiences, right? I grew up in a family where money was something that we respected, but it was also something that felt like was very scarce, was always something that, it was something that we had to work hard for, and something that you always had to save money. We would never spend on like frivolous things. If my dad found out, and by the way, hi dad, if you're watching this, because he watches these YouTube videos sometimes, if he found out that we spent that much money on a meal, I don't know if that would sit well with him. And so we were talking about this because in the table right next to us was this Thai family, very wealthy Thai family, you could tell. And there was this 11-year-old boy there. And the 11-year-old boy, Tom and I were just like, wow, this is his reality. His reality is he eats in 3-star Michelin restaurants with his parents. And we were laughing because, the dad had the wine pairing, and the mom and the boy had like the non-alcoholic wine pairing. Now, mind you, the non-alcoholic wine pairing was an additional $200 to the meal that they were already paying for. And they had the caviar add-on, they had this add-on, and I was just like, oh, his perception of money is completely different from my perception of money. And it's the same thing. If you grew up from a family that had money and had wealth, you would treat money differently. And so as adults, our jobs, one of our main jobs is to always be questioning our subconscious beliefs, always be questioning our money beliefs. Like I say this all the time, your ability to make money isn't just dependent on your skills and your job. It is actually dependent on your beliefs, on what you believe to be true about money. And so this kid is going to grow up with a belief that money is abundant, that you can always have these resources, that you could easily spend money on these Michelin star meals. Like, there's a difference versus people who kind of come from nothing, but they understand how money works. And so this was such an interesting conversation that we were having. And at the end of the experience, Tom and I were like, hey, we're glad we did it. It's a 3-star Michelin restaurant. Were we disappointed? Yes, but there's actually a learning lesson there, because the reason why that restaurant is able to charge that much money is they've built a brand. They have built a brand that has increased the perception of value that other people are willing to pay. And so I was watching a video by Alex Hormozy, and Alex Hormozy was just like, you could take a white t-shirt, and it's a $5 white t-shirt, and you're selling it, but as soon as you put a tiny check, all of a sudden, tick mark, all of a sudden it's branded as a Nike shirt, and you can now sell it for $60. That is only possible because Nike has built a brand. People are willing to pay a premium for the goods and services because of the brand. And so it was the exact same thing with this restaurant. They were able to charge a premium because of the brand and the perceived value that they are offering. And was it worth the price that we paid? Probably not, in my opinion. But the interesting thing is, loads of people were raving about it. If you check the Google reviews, every single person was like, it was amazing, it's amazing. I probably read maybe like 3 bad reviews, and they sounded pretty like, and I was just like, okay, out of all these reviews, and they've been going for 10 years, there's 3 bad reviews. I was like, the food must be amazing. And so There were so many interesting points here around expectation versus reality, around how your perception of money also changes your experience. Maybe for that family, because they were so wealthy, and also that kid, they weren't butthurt about it because it was an everyday occurrence to them. Because to them, they weren't necessarily thinking about the money, but yeah. And so it was such an interesting experience. And I wanted to come in here and create this video because I would love to know what your experience has been in situations like this. When you pay for a premium, do you say that it is really, really good just simply because you paid for a premium? Or if you're more like us, where we would pay for something, and if it didn't live up to the expectation, we're not afraid to say it. Because we know some people where they would be like, oh, but I paid for it, so I'm going to convince myself that it was good, that it was worth it, or else I'll feel bad about it. And so ultimately, money and how you spend your money is very relevant to your circumstance. It's very relevant to your circumstance, to how you live your life. Like Tom and I do not have kids. We travel, we spend our money on experiences. We love having amazing food. We travel all over the world for amazing food. And it was one of those experiences where I'll remember, mainly because of the lessons around it, mainly because of how the human brain works. Because when we left the restaurant, we could overhear a couple of people. They were like, "Oh yeah, it was good, right?" And you could see that one of the women, she was just like, "Yeah, it was okay," but she was like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, it was good, it was good." And it's just so fascinating because in circumstances like this, we really think about the human experience. We think about human psychology a lot, and we think about how we can apply this to our businesses. And so, premium for brands, set the expectation when you are welcoming people in, because chances are people will have a better experience. It's been, I think, almost like a month since that paddle camp. And then Tom goes the other day, he was just like, "Oh, that guy was right about paddle camp." He goes like, "I feel like I'm getting so much better now." And he was just like, he really set the expectation. And now I feel like I'm applying everything that they were teaching and applying everything that I learned, which is really cool to see. And now his experience of that has increased because they have now fulfilled on something that they set the expectation for. And so when people join our world, I always make sure, when I talk about my coaching, I always make sure that people are not joining because they want a get rich quick scheme. I'm like, entrepreneurship is not for everyone. It is hard enough as it is. And when people come in and be like, "I want to make so much money and this and that," and I'm just like, but are you actually prepared to do the work? Are you actually prepared to set the foundations so that you can reap the efforts later? Tom and I always talk that business is cyclical. And so you go through seasons, especially in the beginning when you are starting your business. You have to go through a season where you are planting your seeds, when you're working hard, when you're finding your product market fit. And then you go through seasons where you are reaping the rewards of everything that you've done. And I feel like it's the exact same thing when it comes to making sure that when people join our world, they know that they need to put in the work. And so I would love to know. I would love to hear your experience. If you've ever experienced anything like this, where you've spent money, quite a lot of money, on something and it didn't quite live up to your expectations. So comment, like, subscribe, do your thing, and I'd love to hear from you. I am creating videos for the next 30 days and documenting what it's like navigating my life as someone who is trying to create something extraordinary, as a woman with big ass dreams, crazy goals, and who lives a pretty unconventional life. So follow along, and thank you.